Please subscribe my channel. It was just a lighthearted remark. A quick comment that escaped during a relaxed Friday evening. The sort of thing you say without much thought until everything gets silent. My husband Ryan and I were relaxing in the living room, browsing on our phones, halfway paying attention to a film we weren't really into. We had been married for 5 years. Things felt steady, routine, perhaps a bit too routine. Earlier that night, Ryan's buddy Ethan had come over to return some equipment. He only stayed about 10 minutes. Tall guy, sure of himself, with a big laugh, the type of person who commands attention naturally. After he left, Ryan mentioned how Ethan had been showing off at the gym once more, posing as usual. I chuckled and blurted out without thinking, well, I suppose he has plenty to feel sure about. Ryan lifted an eyebrow, grinned a little, and asked, "What do you mean by that?" I shrugged, still smiling, and said the words that shifted everything. You know, some men are just built bigger. I thought he'd brush it off, perhaps tease me back. Instead, Ryan turned to face me fully, his grin fading. His tone was steady, almost too steady, when he replied, "How do you know that?" It wasn't raised. It wasn't full of anger. It was direct, sharp, as if he already suspected the truth and was challenging me to hide it. If a single question like that has ever struck you hard, you know exactly how that instant felt. If you've been in a partnership where one comment suddenly changes the whole mood, like this post and share it so others who've experienced it can relate too. I tried to play it off with a laugh at first. Come on, it was only a joke. Ryan didn't laugh. He just looked at me, waiting. That's when I knew I'd stepped into an area I couldn't laugh my way out of. He leaned back on the sofa and said, "No, Sarah, you don't say something like that out of nowhere, so let me ask again. How do you know?" My lips parted, then shut. The real story was complicated. Not because I'd been intimate with Ethan, I hadn't, but because it wasn't completely harmless either. A long time ago, before Ryan and I got together, Ethan and I had chatted a bit. Nothing deep. A couple of dates. A few evenings that didn't lead anywhere. It ended quickly and we both moved forward. When Ryan first introduced me to Ethan early in our dating, neither of us brought it up. It seemed pointless, innocent old news, until it no longer was. I shared the truth with Ryan, or at least part of it. I said, "We dated briefly ages ago." That's it. He nodded gradually, staring at the television as if it mattered all of a sudden. "And you thought it was okay to compare me to him?" he asked. That's when the seriousness hit me. This wasn't really about physical size. It was about honoring each other, about not comparing. The last thing a man wants to sense in his own marriage. Ryan got up and said he needed some fresh air. He took his coat and left without saying more. The door closed softly behind him, and the quiet afterward was so heavy it buzzed in my ears. Right here in the story, I'd like your thoughts. If you were Ryan, would you have left too? Leave a comment and simply say left or stayed. He didn't return that night. No messages. I barely rested. My thoughts kept going back to that instant, wishing for a way I'd stayed quiet. When Ryan finally got home the following afternoon, he seemed changed. Not mad, but calm and distant. He said, "We have to talk tonight." Seriously, no dodging. I agreed, feeling knots in my stomach. That night, he brought up things I wasn't ready for. Why I'd felt okay saying that remark. Why Ethan's name even popped up. If I'd ever measured Ryan against someone else. Each question was calm, but there was a deeper edge. Pain combined with self-respect. When I assured him I'd never been unfaithful, he replied, "That's not the issue here." Those words worried me more than shouting would have. If this section of the story hits close to home in an uneasy way, comment with one word: respect. Let's see how many folks get what's truly important. Ryan shared something then that I wasn't prepared for. He said, "When you make a remark like that, you're telling me I have to compete in my own home, and I won't compete for my wife." He wasn't blaming me directly. He was setting a boundary. I saw then that I hadn't viewed casual comments the way he did. For me, words passed quickly. For him, they lingered. We slept that night on far sides of the bed, facing away, with a gap that seemed huge. I lay awake looking at the ceiling, seeing that one thoughtless line had revealed weak spots I hadn't noticed, and I didn't realize yet that what followed would make us both choose what our marriage truly meant. The following days were tougher than the fight itself. Ryan wasn't icy, but he wasn't affectionate either. He still headed to work, still checked if I'd had food, still wished me good night. But the comfort was missing. The little touches, the shared laughs, the way he'd draw me near without effort. It felt like I'd damaged something that time alone couldn't fix. On the third evening, he finally voiced what he'd been keeping in. We were at the kitchen table, the home still, the type of stillness that leads to tough talks. He said, "I've been thinking about that instant, not the remark, but the assurance in your voice." I asked what he meant. He looked right at me and said, "You didn't seem doubtful. You seemed sure." That stung more than his initial question. I tried to clarify. I told him I wasn't comparing him, that it was foolish, impulsive, based on nothing real. He heard me out. Then he said words that changed things for us both. "I don't believe you wanted to hurt me, but I think you overlooked what marriage safeguards." He described how marriage isn't only about staying faithful in deeds. It's about staying loyal in your thoughts, in your words, in what you allow, even in fun. I understood then that I'd taken our closeness for granted. Like after 5 years, we couldn't be harmed. Ryan wasn't seeking comfort. He wanted respect without questions, not from doubt, but because he refused to gradually wonder about his role in his own house. That evening, I shared the complete truth. Not only about Ethan, but about how I'd become too relaxed, too at ease, too reckless with limits. I confessed I hadn't considered how words stick longer for men who hide their hurts. Ryan listened without cutting in. When I was done, he said, "Thanks for being honest." Then he continued, "But know this, if I ever sense I'm being compared to another guy again, even subtly, I won't struggle to keep this. I'll walk away." That frightened me more than any fight. Not as a threat to abandon, but because he meant it fully. Solid. A man who valued himself enough to leave if needed. I viewed him anew in that moment, not just as my partner, but as someone with strong self-respect. In the weeks after, something surprising occurred. We didn't simply go back to how things were. We grew more intentional. Talks became deeper. Teasing became gentler. Kind words carried more weight. Ryan shared more than before, discussing the expectations men face to be sufficient without voicing it. And I discovered something hard about myself. Good intentions don't cancel out harm. And affection doesn't excuse recklessness. Ethan soon stayed in the past where he fit. Ryan never demanded I avoid him. He didn't have to. The change started with me, from realizing marriage isn't about resisting temptation. It's about not bringing it in disguised as a laugh. Months on, Ryan quietly told me one evening that when he asked, "How do you know?" he wasn't seeking a full admission. He was seeing if I still viewed him as the benchmark, not the one to measure against, but the main reference. That made my heart hurt unexpectedly, because I saw how near I'd been to getting that wrong in irreversible ways. We remained together, closer but wiser. And I share this not because it turned out fine. I share it because it nearly didn't. Because harm often isn't from cheating. It comes from overlooking what your words mean to the one who picked you. If you've read to here, you know this isn't truly about size, remarks, or another person. It's about being mindful of how fast ease can become taking things for granted, and how respect, once damaged, doesn't always signal when it's fading. Before you leave, if this touched you, do 3 things. Like the video to spread it to those who need this view. Comment. Do you feel remarks like this go too far in a marriage? Yes or no? And explain why. Subscribe for more honest, raw relationship tales that tell it straight. Because often the riskiest times in a partnership aren't from arguments. They're from casual words that show more than intended.